Amiga, do you ever feel caught between two worlds? You cherish your cultural background, but sometimes it clashes with the realities of raising a family in modern America. You might feel pressured to fulfill traditional expectations, yet you crave a life that allows you to be your true, authentic self. If you're a Latina mom nodding your head right now, I see you, and I get it. Balanced Motherhood is more than your average mommy coaching program. It's a supportive comunidad designed specifically for you. I understand the unique challenges you face navigating between generations and culturas while forging your own path as a mama. Stop feeling like you have to choose between your roots and your future. Balanced Motherhood empowers you to create a life that celebrates your heritage, embraces your motherhood journey, and prioritizes your own happiness. Spots are limited. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with a supportive community and create a more balanced life. Visit the link in the show notes to join the waitlist for the next Balanced Motherhood cohort. I can't wait to meet you. Hola, hola, amiga. I want you to do a little bit of reflection and ask yourself, how was my relationship with money growing up? And how is it now? You see, our experiences in our childhood and upbringing does shape our views about money, where it can impact us today as adults, especially as mommies. Although this is not a personal finance podcast whatsoever, it is so important that we talk about money and the way we are teaching our kids about money. Many of us are daughters of immigrants or descendants of immigrants where our families were not able to thrive at the same speed as other families who have historically been established here in the U.S. And this was mostly due to making ends meet and out of survival. But now that most of us are learning about financial freedom, investing, and all of these different strategies that we hear of, it is very important to shift to a positive money mindset where it can ultimately help us not only love our dinero, but talk about dinero with our children. On this episode, I have the privilege of having a very special guest. Adriana Galvan, the driving force behind Adriana Talks Dinero, is with us today. She discusses the importance of cultivating a positive money mindset, delayed gratification, and shares tips on how to teach children about financial responsibility through budgeting, investing, and transparent conversations. Adriana has a rich background rooted in resilience and determination. As the eldest daughter of immigrant parents from Tamaulipas and Oaxaca, Mexico, and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, she embodies the fusion of diverse cultures and experiences. Education was a cornerstone in her upbringing, leading her to pursue a double MBA in her 20s. Entrepreneurship flows in Adriana's veins, prompting her to establish her own business venture over a year and a half ago, and she is doing phenomenal, let me tell y'all. Her passion lies in demystifying the often taboo subject about money. Adriana finds fulfillment in empowering women and the BIPOC community by sharing insights on budgeting, investing, travel hacking, negotiating pay, and asset protection. Through her work, she not only educates but also inspires others to achieve financial empowerment and security. Mujer, Adriana and I delve pretty deep in this conversation, and I am so excited for you to listen. So without further ado, here's my interview with Adriana Galvan from Adriana Talks Dinero. Welcome to the Viva la Mami podcast. I am your host, Jessica Cuevas. I am a mother of two on a mission to help redefine the meaning of motherhood as a modern Latina mom. Motherhood can be a complex journey, interwoven in two identities that often make us feel ni de aquí ni de allá. Viva la Mami is committed to providing you with knowledge, tools, and support to navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood as Latina moms. On the show, we'll be discussing culturally relevant topics that will help inform and empower you in whichever season you are in on your motherhood journey. We'll be joined by Latina moms, experts and professionals who can offer advice, practical tips, relatable stories, and honest conversations. So bring your cafecito as I invite you to be a part of this space as we create comunidad about the exciting and challenging parts of being a mommy. Ahora, vámonos. Hola, hola, Adriana. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Jessica?
I am good. Thank you for being here. And through this year, I've been getting to know you a lot more. And Mujer, you do so much. I don't know how you have the time to do what you do, inspiring the community, doing a great job in your professional career as well, which I would love everyone here listening on this podcast to know a little bit more about you and kind of explain to us what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Adriana Galvan. I am the owner and founder of Adriana Talks Dinero, and that's kind of where you and I have, gotten to know each other through different sorts of mentoring programs and social media and all of the other things. But aside from that, I actually also have a 9 to 5. Like you said, I'm quite busy. So I actually work in human resources. So I am a regional human resources business partner for the Midwest and the Northeast. So I travel quite a bit. And with that, I also have my own business. I actually started my business when I was laid off at my last role, which was also a business partner role. And that's kind of where Adriana Talks Dinero was kind of inspired to start. The seeds were planted quite a while ago. And it was just when you're in HR, you see so many different parts of individuals' lives. You see the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. I've seen marriages, births of children, families getting bigger, promotions, people graduating college and they get new jobs. But I've also seen deaths of spouses, deaths of children, cancer, getting into like really bad financial decisions. So, because I mainly work in manufacturing or I currently work in a warehousing sort of situation now, I really do see the struggles that our community has on all around money, all around finances, how they kind of get what I call poached into unfair and what I see as unjust financial decisions. So that's kind of where Adriana Talks Dinero came about. I really wanted to educate people. Thankfully, I've been financially well. Yes, I had debt. I still have like student loan debt because I have up to a double master's, but nonetheless, I try to live under my means. I try to pay myself first by investing and getting ready for retirement. So that's really what Adriana Talks Dinero entails.
Yes. Yes. And I love that it is very intentional for people like you and me who are first, second generation, who we really don't talk about generational wealth and how we can literally build off of how we navigate this world and how we can start for the next generation. And it's not necessarily whether if you have kids or not, it's also the old generation, right? And how we can also take care of our parents, our even our
Mhm.
grandparents,
Mhm.
and people that really matter in our lives. And you share so many wonderful tips on your social media platform, and I just love all that you're doing. And can you kind of walk us back though a couple steps and tell us a little bit more about your money story? What was kind of like your upbringing like? I'm kind of curious about that. And how did your parents talk to you about money?
Yeah, absolutely. So to take it back, all the way from the very beginning, I am the firstborn daughter of immigrant parents. So my mom came at 9 months old. She moved to Chicago from Tamaulipas, Mexico. And then my dad came over when he was about 23 from Oaxaca, Mexico. So my mom came over when she was very, very young. My grandfather wasn't there for her birth because he was trying to, per se, like, make the roots here in Chicago. And he ended up sending for his family to come back. So she was the third one in line. So she's the middle child. So she is kind of Americanized, I would say, because she did grow up here quite a bit. But there was always that sense of that my grandparents always made sure that they would take their children back during the holidays or any sort of break and things like that. So they knew where they came from. And my parents did very much the same thing with me and my younger brother. It's only two of us. So we always saw that mom always took care of the money and dad would work. And my dad is, quote unquote workaholic. He would always have his 9 to 5 and then some sort of side hustle that he would do. So when I was very young, he's always been a mechanic at different forms or at different levels. So he worked for a Ford dealership in the Chicago suburbs and he started as a porter there. A porter is someone who moves the cars back and forth or fills them up or washes them and whatnot, and made his way all the way up to master mechanic. So he could basically work on any car that Ford had at the time. And he actually retired early. So he retired when he was 55, which is a big attribute for him. And a lot of that is thanks to his entrepreneurial journey. My mom was a daughter of also an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship was pretty heavy on both sides. And my grandfather had a landscaping business and he'd get like government contracts and things like that. So she always saw that business aspect of it. So she did take that into her marriage and said, mi amor, like when you do get an extra amount of money, let's try to invest it in real estate, or let's go ahead and invest into something else, or let's try to do things the best possible way that we could so we can gain income. And I remember an instance, I must have been like in high school or something. And this was like the second time that my dad got hurt on the job. So he's going through workers' comp. And the first time he actually won the workers' comp case and he ended up investing in a small house that was going to be a rental property. My mom's like, let's go this way instead of taking the kids like Disney World or, however we want to spoil them. So that's kind of where that seed grew. And the money that was coming in, he'd go ahead and invest in real estate. So now he has passive income through his rental properties. So at the end of the day, when he got hurt the second time around, I remember him on the phone with like short-term disability, and they were giving him a hard time saying, well, because you make income off of something else rather than just your 9 to 5, we can't give you short-term disability. And he was livid. He started yelling on the phone to the person on the other line. He's like, why is it my fault that I did things appropriately and I used my money to go ahead and invest in something to make me money where other people don't do that? Why are you going to penalize me? And that stuck with me. I was probably like 16 around that time, 17 around that time, but that stuck with me because I'm like, my goodness, like here he was like trying to do better for himself, and something that was supposed to be a benefit to him through work doesn't want to help him out. So they always taught us, try to have money saved up, live under your means. In my family, we always really drove used cars when we were growing up because my dad's a mechanic. I mean, he'd get a used car and he'd make it look nice and spiffy, and he knew how to work on it. The only times that we got brand new cars was a tradition was on my mom's side of the family was the time that you were going to have your quinceañera. You either got the new car, or a quinceañera. And so basically all of us ended up choosing the new car, and that's what we ended up doing. And that kind of helped me quite a bit because I didn't have a car payment for 16 years. I drove that thing till the wheels fell off. I just donated it this year because I couldn't fix it anymore. It was just too much money. It was starting to become a money pit. So mom always taught us that money should be saved. It should be budgeted. I grew up on the cash envelopes. If someone doesn't know what a cash envelope is, essentially, I still remember my mom had this big desk that my grandpa gifted her when she went to high school. And on the right top hand drawer, there was you'd open the drawer and there was envelopes that had labels on different things. Groceries, gas. We had pets at the time, so the dog had one, so Licorice had one, Socks the cat had one, and everything was in there. We all had allowance because we had a helper around the house, and the rule was if you wanted something special, you wanted a toy, you wanted a game, or something that was outside of the necessities of life, you better save for it. And, I think back on how my parents did Christmas, and they actually gave us, I think at the beginning was like a $200 budget. So we would go to the store. We would, at this time, Toys R Us was around.
Oh, I missed that place.
Yes. So mom would take us to Toys R Us and would say Santa can only spend $200 on each kid because if they spend too much more, then it's not fair to Santa. And that's where she kind of got us thinking about the value of a dollar. And we would choose whatever toys and games we wanted, and we put it on layaway. And mom would tell the person on layaway, okay, Adriana is putting this away so Santa could come by and pick it up later. And they were such angels. They would just say, yeah, Santa's going to come by and pick it up later and things like that. So that's kind of how she started making us realize that, the value of a dollar, that you don't need everything instantly. And she also says to this day, I never had to fight over Tickle Me Elmo or Cabbage Patch Kids or anything because you guys were the ones that would choose what gifts you wanted within this budget. And then Santa, which is mom and dad, will go ahead and pick it up later.
Yeah.
So that was really, my upbringing, making sure that we were in budget with things, how to make a dollar stretch because mom was a stay-at-home mom while dad worked, and really understand what the value of a dollar was from something as simple as understanding what a gift under the Christmas tree from Santa was supposed to look like.
Yeah. I think that is wonderful. And I'm kind of reflecting on my experience with money, and everything was kind of given to me so easily. And I didn't get to appreciate the value of a dollar, or just how much my parents worked, how hard they worked, and I got it really easy. You can call me spoiled in that way. And I think it's because my parents didn't want me to see the dark side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But now as an adult, I've come to realize how expensive things are.
Yeah.
And, we have to navigate, okay, well, how much should we budget for XYZ, and all of that. And I think, had my parents been a little bit more transparent, I would say, I think it would have made an impact on the way that I see money now. And now I had to navigate things a little differently. And not that I'm blaming them. I think it's more so out of survival as first generation immigrants. Our parents grew up just either poor, extremely poor, or they knew how to work their money. I feel like it's kind of binary in that way.
Yep.
And now it's up to us to either learn from mistakes or learn from those success stories, even though there are learning opportunities as well from our parents. Like, for example, with your dad, who did everything right, but he was still kind of penalized for doing things right. So either way, it's a learning experience. And so how can we really change our mindset about money for those that grew up with scarcity to abundance? Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that? And first kind of define what scarcity mindset is versus abundance mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. So scarcity mindset, when I'm talking about money and finances, it's that fear that there's never enough money to pay for things, or it's that fear on where is that next dollar going to come in, which a lot of it is a reality for a lot of families. And I completely understand that and I empathize with that. And the abundant mindset is that you use money as a tool, or that you know that if there's a will, there's a way, which so many of us do already, right? I remember seeing aunts or like good friends of mine whose parents are also immigrants. They would work their 9 to 5. And because their mom knew how to make amazing food, they would sell tamales or they will sell gorditas out of their house, right? Or if they knew how to sew. My grandmother actually was a great seamstress. So one of her side hustles in Mexico was that she would sew things, and she would always make things for us, and she would make her own dresses and things like that. And she was a religious woman, so she'd give back to the church and make like el traje por el virgen, right? Like the outfit for the virgins. And a lot of us use the skills that we have in order to monetize or to barter, right? Okay, I'll watch your kid for on Tuesdays and Thursdays if you can make me a dress for the quinceañera that's coming up, right? For my daughter. So you're bartering. So you don't have to spend all this money on a dress, but you get childcare so you can do whatever you need to do. So, that's really that big difference. And the way that I see it is, for one, a lot of us come from parents or ourselves. We're in this country where we don't understand what the money system looks like. We don't understand how it works in our benefit. And we're terrified because we don't know the language, right? So that kind of puts you in a scarcity mindset. And who am I supposed to trust? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And it can be tough to get over that sort of mindset. It takes a lot of inner work. I always say journaling is a great way to do it. The one way that when I coach my clients, because I do one-on-one money coaching, and we're trying to figure out what are those triggers or what are the reasons for the overspending or not being able to save, or, the fear to ask for more money at work, we do an exercise. And one of the questions that I ask is, what is your earliest memory of money? Believe it or not, we actually process, or we actually have our mindset about how money works in this world by the age of 7. 7 years old. I'm 33 right now. I am not the same girl I was at 7 years old. So if you don't have parents who show you how to budget, or that teach you how to use money as a tool, or that tell you all the time, no tenemos dinero for this, or no tenemos dinero por el otro, well, of course, you're going to grow with this sort of negative money mindset. We don't have money. I don't have money. I'm not worthy of money. I actually had a client who she would just spend money like it was nothing. She'd get a paycheck on Friday, Saturday, the money was gone. She didn't care what she spent it on. And I asked her the question, I'm like, what is your most, your earliest money memory? And she says, and she starts crying, and she's like, my earliest money memory was, she was like 5 or 6. And her birthday is a little after the holidays. So it's like that first or second week of January. And she said, I got all this money for Christmas, for my birthday, and things like that. And it was time to go to La Tienda, where we always go to Walmart on a Sunday. So she hid all of her money like in a sock and put it at the back of her sock drawer. So it was time to go to Walmart, and she was super excited because she's like, I'm going to get like a Barbie dream house or like the dream car or something. She was so excited. She goes into her sock drawer and the money's gone. And she's crying because she had her heart set on this Barbie, let's say, convertible. And she's crying to her mom. She's like, Mommy, someone stole my money. Like, someone took it. Like, I wanted to buy this car for my Barbies. And she's like, no, mija, I had to take it because I had to pay for the bills, because Christmas was too expensive and your birthday was too expensive. So she says to herself, okay, like internally, as she's 6 years old, internally she's like, okay, I have to spend every single dollar that I get because someone's going to steal it from me. And that was essentially what she was doing from the age of 6 to 35, because she would go back to the little niña that she was, and she's like, F this, I have to spend my money. So it's really understanding what did you go through as a child, even in those very early years, because those things that we go through in our early years will carry us because, again, by the age of 7, we already have our understanding on how money works in the world.
And considering that, like, how can parents be careful with that? And I have 2 little ones, right? I
Mm-hmm.
have an almost 3-year-old at the time of this recording and 7-month-old. And so I'm being very mindful with the way I present myself, but a veces se me pasa,
Yeah.
and I think it could be the way that I was brought up with money too. And I think it's this like mindset of like overspending, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm not going to have how my parents struggled with money, really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. And so, how can families or parents, specifically moms, because considering this podcast and community, how can we kind of change that mindset first and then the way that we present ourselves in front of our children?
So the way that I would go about it, I'm not a mother, but my mom is an early childhood educator, so we have these conversations quite a bit. And for oneself, we'll start there. I would really recommend for you to kind of take a deep dive and ask that question to yourself. What is your earliest memory of money?
Mhm.
Good, bad, or indifferent? Now, if it was bad, learn from that and try not to give that to your kids, right? If it was something good, take from that and try to go ahead and show that to your kids too. And it's really understanding that money is essentially a tool for us to work our way through society,
Right.
right? If we have, a good amount of money, we can send our kids to good schools, we can live in better neighborhoods, we can send them to enriching classes like music classes and sports and things like that. And it's something that us ourselves has to kind of take like a deep dive and say, okay, we have to live within this reality of things. So if we're on a one salary income, how do I make that dollar stretch, which is really tough, nowadays.
Mhm.
Or even going back, and I look at my mom's system of the money envelope system, and once the money was gone in that envelope, it was gone. Like, we had to wait till the next week where it was time for her to stuff those envelopes on Saturday morning. And it really shows delayed gratification. And as a kid, it teaches you a lot, because a lot of times the people around us, the way they want to show us love is to buy us things and to spoil us and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but at some point, something's got to give. And we have to teach our children that not everything can be handed to them the minute that they say, I want this.
Mhm.
And that's really how my mom taught us. And I thank her for it, because there were some times where she's like, oh, well, we just went grocery shopping. If you want to go to McDonald's, let's look at your envelope. Do you have enough money for it? And that's when we go ahead and say yes or no. And if it was a yes, she'd say, would you want to spend your money on it? And that's something that us as children would go ahead and take a step back and be like, all right, is it worth paying? I think back then it was like $4 or $5 for a Happy Meal. Was it worth paying like the $4 for a Happy Meal, or would I rather put that $4 towards something else that I'm saving for?
Yeah.
So decisions like we make as adults, right? Should I go ahead and buy that $20 lipstick, or should I go ahead and keep on saving that money for that new jacket that I have my eye on?
Mhm.
Right? Because the last thing we want is our kids to always need that instant gratification on things. And then they start swiping the credit card, and now they're in a lot of debt and they're paying a bunch of interest on their credit cards. And then they're just in this big hole, and it just turns into a whole mess. So the envelope system has been such a great thing that my mother built that foundation on. And I would strongly stay away from, we don't have money for that, Or, what I would hear a lot, like, from my tias and stuff when they're talking to my cousins, que no tenemos dinero por eso, because it kind of puts a negative connotation to money. We don't have it. We don't have it. Instead saying, you know what, mija, like, we just spent money on the groceries. Let's go ahead and budget for it for next week or budget for it for Friday and go to McDonald's then. Right? So
Yes.
it's not an instant thing. And you're not telling them we don't have money for it like indefinitely. It's just right now isn't the correct time, or I can go ahead and give that to you at a later date. Or we can go out to eat at a later date and you can choose if it's McDonald's, Burger King, you know, KFC, whatever the kids love nowadays. And they have that decision, because that was a big thing that I appreciate my mother instilling in us, is that we always have choices,
Yeah.
right? It's choices as simple as, do you want a red cup or a blue cup? And that really helped us with the budgeting. When we were really little, it was like $5 a week. And then once we got older, then it would go up in $5 increments. And we were in, I think, like freshman in high school, we got like $20 a week because we would help out around the house. So she's like, you have a choice. Do you want to spend that money on an ice cream cone or on a pair of shoes? Or do you want to save it up? My brother was infamous for this. He'd always save up all of his money for like really expensive video games, where I'd always go like the makeup route or like the hair stuff and all that other things. So I could go a little bit more often. My brother had to hold out for like a $60 game. And then he'd get to that point and he's like, well, is it worth it? And then that starts, kind of putting into the child, which will become an adult one day like the rest of us, and start making those smart choices when it comes to spending.
Yes. Oh, I love that you mentioned the choices aspect, because that essentially transcends to everything when it comes to parenting, right? Giving them the option, and it gives them kind of like that power, but not necessarily, because you're giving them a choice between one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it on the money aspect, it gives them the ability to already make those critical decisions, right? To really delve a little bit more in their thinking. Okay, do I want to wait, or do I want to choose this or that? And that way they can understand the value of a dollar. And oftentimes many people, they either close it and they're just like, there's no room for negotiation, like we cannot afford it, or they just like give an abundance of just things that literally they stuff on the kids' faces. And so we need to be kind of careful and definitely give them that opportunity to have choices, because I think that is very effective, especially as they grow up and then they end up being adults, and then they're not sure how to really manage money or how to really look at money in a positively way, right?
Yeah.
And so, you did mention that your parents and your mom specifically instills the cash envelope system, which for me, I did utilize it right before the pandemic and all throughout, I would say 2020. And that saved us a lot, like in terms of money, but also paying off debt. And I love that. And so, in addition to that, right, like how did your parents influence positivity when it comes to having a positive money mindset to you? And how can we kind of be mindful about that in terms of speaking positively about money?
Yeah. So for both sides of my parents, it was always to like live within our means, right? We would save for things. So, we got to experience the Disney World, we got to experience amusement parks and things like that, but we knew that mom and dad had to save for it. So we couldn't do everything all at once. And I think that's a big thing. We can't do everything all at once. One year we'll do this, one year we'll do that. And I think a big thing of it too is because my parents made an effort. I've been going back and forth to Mexico since I was 6 months old. And I've been going pretty consistently. I'm 33 now, and I try to go every year to, one side of the family or the others, because my mom's all the way up north and then my dad's family is down south. And that really opens your eyes to how lucky one is. And I'm an avid traveler myself. So I've been to different parts of the country, not only the country, but different parts of the world. And when you come back, I always say, when you go to countries that aren't maybe as industrialized as the United States or isn't as financially well off as the United States, you really are grateful and you take in consideration all the blessings that you do have.
Mm-hmm.
And you appreciate hot water when you take a shower. You appreciate a comfy mattress. You appreciate the fact that you have a washing machine. When I go to Mexico, I wash my clothes by hand. So, I come back and I'm like, thank goodness I have a washing machine. I don't have to wash my clothes every single day. So, you appreciate those little things. But yet, we all have a richness in something. Like the Mexican culture is very rich in so many different things. And I've been lucky enough, I hear a lot of times that people say, ni de aquí, ni de allá. I think very much the opposite. Soy de aquí, pero mi corazón está allá. So I live the beautiful parts of both worlds, and I can take the positivity of both sides. And my parents very much instilled me in that, and then also to give back. So my mom, works for Head Start. So she works with a lot of low income children. I always try to give back to my community in any way that I possibly can. Every Saturday morning, I wake up early as heck because I actually volunteer with my local library here in Elgin, Illinois, to give English as a second language classes to immigrants. So I work one-on-one with a woman who's reaching retirement age, but she wants to be independent, so she wants to learn English. She's been here for like 30 years and she doesn't know the language. So it's really understanding that, yes, you're lucky, and everything that you do have, you should be thankful for and grateful for. But you also have to give into the world, and in a sense of karma, you have to give good into the world in order to get back good. And I always try to live by that, and always just try to live on that high vibration of gratitude to say, I'm thankful that I still have my parents. I'm thankful that I have a roof over my head. I'm thankful for this, because when you fall out of that and you start falling into, oh, I wish I had a 2024 Mercedes Benz, or, oh, I wish I had that brand new Louis Vuitton purse, or, oh, I wish I could, have, what's it called? Like plastic surgery to get like that mom surgery or whatever. And you start falling into this negative cycle. And then you start spending money because you're keeping up with the Joneses, because you really care that the person next door just got a brand new car and I got to compete with them because you can't let them show you up. And that's not the case. My mom always says the secret in life is that you are secure in yourself and all of the blessings that you currently have. And when you are in that mindset or in that high vibration, right, it doesn't matter what everyone else has, because you know that you're blessed with good health, good family, good friends, your children are healthy, you're healthy, you have a loving husband, all these things. The list goes on and on. But yet here you are being miserable because you want that brand new Mercedes Benz. So, a lot of times, especially in this society, because we're in a capitalistic society, we feel like we're missing something and we start filling it in with tangible things. We go on a shopping spree and some people like black out and they end up like spending $500, and then they go to their car and they're like, oh, where did these shopping bags come from? Because they were in a really, really low vibration. And that gave them the high, they were able to feel good for a little bit, and then they feel that regret. It's really being in that grateful mindset, and it can take you so far.
Oh my gosh, it's all about mindset for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's just wild how the brain can literally influence habits.
Mhm.
And based on your habits, you are modeling either negatively or positively to your kids. And it makes so much sense how you can then end up in this repeated cycle,
Mhm.
right? And oftentimes, at least for me, when my parents came from nothing, sometimes even I feel like, well, I am college educated. I have a master's degree. You know, why do I still feel like I'm in the same cycle? And I think
Mhm.
part of it is the way that I was approached with money, or how I kind of still, even today, think about money.
Mhm.
And I need to take a couple steps back and reflect and think, okay, well, there's a reason why I think this way. How can I change that negative mindset
Mhm.
specifically,
Mhm.
whenever I do think negatively about money? And I'm 34 years old. I'm almost 35, and I can't let that cycle be repeated, because then it's going to be repeated to my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I have to think, okay, well, I have a partnered relationship, and my husband and I both come from two different spectrums. He grew up where money is saved, like an
Mhm.
abundant amount of money is saved, but it's almost like under the mattress sort of thing,
Mhm.
where money doesn't grow.
Yeah.
And for me, I grew up where money should be spent and you should enjoy yourself because,
Yeah.
YOLO. And so, coming from those two different mindsets, in a way, they were kind of, I would say that we had to overcome a lot of money trauma,
Mhm.
to then come into agreement and build clarity within each other, to now figuring out, okay, well, what do we want? What kind of goals do we have in mind? How can we really let money work for us instead of us working for the money?
Mhm.
And so it took us a while, but I think we're kind of getting there. We bought real estate, we are investing in it. Right now, it's letting us have the ability to be in a single income household. But my goal is to eventually work, and I am still working right through this
Yeah.
platform, and I'm working part time, right? And I think it's so that we can better ourselves, but definitely leave a legacy for our children, not so necessarily of money specifically. Obviously, that is part of it, but also so that our kids can have a positive relationship with money as well.
Mhm.
And so, considering kind of my short little story here that I also mentioned, and how you grew up, right? Or the clients that you worked with, how
Mhm.
can we really avoid the negative money mindset and overcome our money traumas to then, not pass it on to our future generations?
Yeah. So, going back to that question that I always ask my clients when we're trying to figure out, why are you hoarding money? Why are you spending money? Or why are you thinking this way? Ask yourself, ask your partner. And heck, if you want to take it that much deeper and you have a really good communication and relationship with your parents, ask them the same question. You'll be really surprised on what they say. And you can kind of start seeing how their answer to that question really is a trajectory on how they showed you what money is supposed to look like. Because remember, we have the mindset of what money looks like by the age of 7. That's very, very young in our lifetime, right? Because we're already in our 30s, mid 30s. I would also say, so I went to a financial convention this fall, and I never knew this existed. And I thought it was super interesting. There are such things as called financial therapists. So they are therapists that do therapy with you, but they are in the financial realm. And they are beautiful souls. The ones that I met are absolutely amazing. So I highly recommend if you are trying to work through all of this and trying to raise your children to, be the best mindset within money, go ahead and go to one of them, right? I can only do coaching to so much to go ahead and get you to prepare your money, to budget your money, how to spend it, how to save it, how to invest it. But that inner work with the trauma, it's probably what I would say, leave it to the professionals, which there is such thing as a financial therapist. If I were in those shoes and if I was a mom and trying to figure out how do I not put the trauma on my children, or how do I overcome this trauma that I just can't get over, go ahead and look up financial therapists. I mean, reach out to me, slide in my DMs, and you're like, hey, I heard your episode of Viva la Mami with Jessica, and you mentioned a financial therapist. Like, do you know of one? I will send you, profiles of ones that I have personally met. Well, I haven't worked with them, but again, like I said, they're wonderful people. So it's really finding help when you do need that help, because sometimes it's a lot of inner work, and healing is a long journey. It's not linear. It's like up and down, up and down, up and down. So, take that time to heal yourself in order to give the best possible to your kids, and make sure that you're having those conversations with your kids. Sometimes I remember my parents had to have difficult conversations with us. I'm a 2009 high school graduate. Here I am aging myself, but if a lot of us don't know or remember, 2008 was a bad year for our parents. A lot of our parents lost jobs. A lot of our parents lost houses. A lot of our parents weren't making good money. And we had this conversation. I was about to graduate high school, going to go into college. And my parents had to have this honest conversation with us that money was going to be tight. And it is because of what's going on in the economy. So upon myself, well, I didn't have to make this choice, but I saw how much my parents worked, and they worked really hard. And I thought that they gave me everything plus everything else that they possibly ever could. So I took a very different path for college, where I went to my local community college, and then I went to an adult program, and then I went to another adult program for my master's. So I went the non-traditional route, so I could work full time while I went to school, because I didn't want to be a burden to my parents. Well, they were trying to figure out all of their financial situations. They didn't tell me to do that, but because they had that conversation to me, and because I saw all of my friends' parents struggling by the time I graduated, I'm like, well, something's got to give, and I don't want to be much more of a burden to my parents. So I'm going to go this way. And, here I am now with a double master's, and, I did it. I could have gone to a state school and have my parents pay for it or whatnot, but I didn't see it as fair. So there's always options, right? Just we were talking about choices. There's choices to everything. And, sometimes those honest conversations really do help us at the end of the day, because now I know for myself, because I went down that path, I didn't go into like 6 figures of debt like a lot of my friends did. And I make decent amount of money from my 9 to 5 because my parents instilled in me that I am worthy on very many different levels. And that includes in how much I want to make at work. And that's even a conversation that I can go into a whole different episode, but negotiating your pay, knowing that you're worth just as much as the white guy that also has a double master's, right? Leveraging the skills that we have as firstborn daughters, because we have special skills within ourselves, because we have such a huge responsibility of our parents. And that's transferable to a job, or being bilingual. You don't have to be perfectly bilingual. The guy next to you doesn't know that you're not fluent, or if you are fluent, or, you speak a little bit of slang, but, your employees understand what you're saying. So leverage off of all those skills and all the beautiful knowledge that you do have as a unique individual, as being an immigrant, or the first, second, or third generation of immigrants, where you have these skills of speaking a different language, or, being empathetic, or having the patience of a saint, or being able to multitask, or, you're the one that was in charge of putting everyone in order. Guess what? You're a project manager.
Yeah.
So, that's a whole thing too, that we ourselves have to look from the inside and be like, I am worthy of that. And then,
Mm.
tell that to our kids that you're worthy of that too.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So many layers. So many layers. And at the end of the day, it can
Hmm.
definitely make a big impact in the way that you present yourself,
Hmm.
to your kids, to all other forms of relationships that you have in your household, parents, grandparents, but definitely out in the world as well, and even at work. So it is very interesting
Yeah,
how, yeah, and it's all interconnected as well.
it is. It
Wild.
really is.
It's wild. So, what are some action steps moms can take when it comes to modeling an abundance mindset, or if they want to start, you know, having this different mindset?
Yeah. So budgeting for sure. And that delayed gratification is a big thing, right? I know as much as, we're parents, I don't have nieces and nephews, but I call my really good friends' kids, right? My nieces and nephews, like I'm the auntie, right? And they're just like, and I've been told before from my goddaughter, she's like, can you buy me this? I'm like, why do you ask me and not your mom? And she's like, because I know you're rich. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Because she sees I don't have children and I have my own house. So she thinks I'm rich. But it's that delayed gratification, like, let's save for it, let's budget for it. A big thing that I wish my parents did, which I'm learning myself and now I'm teaching my mommy and papi, is investing,
Mhm.
right? Investing in the market, right? There's things called custodial accounts that you can go ahead and invest in the market in. So what I wish my parents would have done, be like, see, Mika, you want a Happy Meal? Let's say, just to round the numbers, let's say a Happy Meal is $3. So my parents could have been like, Mika, you have $5. So if you want a Happy Meal, you're gonna go ahead and buy a Happy Meal for $3, but the other $2 you have to invest in McDonald's.
Okay.
So that money grows, right? So it's that sort of thing to say, okay, yes, I can buy this, but I need to invest for my future self to go ahead and purchase this and start teaching them at that age. They don't have to understand how the entire world of a stock works. You essentially just say, you buy a stock, now you're a part owner of the company that makes that toy. And every single time that a little boy or girl buys that toy and that company makes money, you also make money. And that's
Mhm.
essentially would be the easiest way to go ahead and explain it. That's how I explain it to,
Yes.
people that don't really get the stock market. And they're like, oh. So it's investing in yourself, save your money, not in the mattress. I mean, you can start with them with the piggy bank, right? But
Okay.
start teaching them on banks, on savings account. And savings account is just for savings and you only take it out for emergencies. Open up their checking account or whatnot. Teach them about the value of a dollar to work for a dollar. We had to do chores when we wanted
Mhm.
to work, right? And if we wanted something extra, we lived at a big house and we never asked for anything in the fall because we had so many trees, because we already knew what the chore was going to be. Oh,
Mhm.
you want that extra thing? You're going to go rake the leaves. And that took all day long. So, you know, have them work for their dollar per se, have them understand what the value of a working dollar is. And then, two, the value of a dollar. Let's say, I know every single time I go to Target, every single time, it never fails, I hear parents say, now don't ask me for anything, right? Or
Yep.
don't be asking me for a toy because I just bought you one last week. Instead, give them $2, give them $5, and say, you cannot ask me for anything else. You have $2, $5, however much you want to give them. And that's what you can spend today on what you want. We're here to buy groceries. Here's mama's grocery list. This is what we're going to buy. We're not buying anything else. If you want a bag of chips, you're going to go ahead and use that money. You want candy? It's not on the list this week. You're going to use that money. And then they'll be like, dang, like, a bag of chips is like $3. There goes all of my $5 pretty much with taxes, right? And have them go through the line by themselves, talk to the cashier, say, good evening, how are you? Have them do that small talk, have them hand over the money, have them receive the money so they understand how all that works. because that's going to take them pretty far. So those are some things that I would do if I were to have children, or if I drag my niece and nephew with me somewhere. That's what we're going to be doing.
I love everything that you mentioned. And I've definitely heard of custodial IRAs, which we'll definitely look into that because my husband is all into like the stocks and everything. And I should too. But I'm like, okay, here, just take my $50. You do the magic. But yeah, I think it's definitely important for us to not keep it on the down low, but to also be transparent to our children and tell them how it works, right? Whether if it's the stock market or even how much a piece of gum is, because at the end of the day, they're going to then appreciate, the things that we do, but also they'll end up then deciding whether if it's worth buying that piece of gum or not. And that definitely can make a big difference. Whew, so much information that you shared, Adriana, and I appreciate your wisdom and everything. Where can people follow you?
Yeah, so you can go ahead and follow me I'm most active on Instagram. I go ahead and I go on TikTok as well, a little bit on Facebook, but all of them are under Adriana Talks Dinero, all together, no hashes, no anything. You can also go on my website, which is adrianatalksdinero.com. You can go ahead and send me an email if you have any questions. And, I offer one-on-one money coaching for individuals, and I also do couples as well. I also do workshops throughout the year. So if you don't feel comfortable with a one-on-one money coaching session or a few sessions, go ahead and keep an eye out for those workshops. I do different workshops throughout the year. And of course, like you mentioned earlier in the beginning, I do social media content. So I always go over an array of different topics that have to do with personal finance.
Yes. I'll make sure to share all of your information in the show notes. That way people can reach out to you and follow you if in case they haven't yet. But I want to thank you again so much for being here. I love that Latinas get to empower Latinas, and the fact that you share a lot through your platform. It is very inspiring and doable as well. You speak very humbly. And you challenge us as well, which I really appreciate because that's something that we need to keep doing, right? Like keep empowering folks that we really care about, especially within our comunidad. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for all of the great feedback you just gave.
Mujer, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the Viva la Mami podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a rating and review? Hitting that follow button and reviewing my show will allow other mommies like you find this podcast. Your review will also tell me if you enjoy the show, so I would truly appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget, please share this podcast con tus amigas. Also, make sure to follow me at Viva la Mami on Instagram or visit vivalamami.com. Please note the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Okay, mujer, thank you for joining y nos vemos in the next episode.